Welcome back. So we continue from the last video, which is the only part remaining is the third bullet. So we need to prompt the user for more inputs, print the result, and keep in a loop till the user enters no input, at which point we terminate. Let's unpause beacons again, or before I unpause beacons, let's take a look at the class diagram view. We can see that now we have some objects emerging. Calculator. So we have our console.calc class, which has a single run method delegates to the calculator class, and the calculator class just has that method and several private methods. So this plays a role that the console implements. So we move on. Okay. So the next step is we will start with the smallest test. So the smallest test is one where the user does not enter a second input and exits that. So in that case, we need to here we want to check a number of things. We want to check that the first result is printed. So we also want to check that prompts for another input. And we also want to assert that actually just a flag, and this will all happen when I do this. Okay. So that's our test. Unpause beacons and let's build. Actually, we have a test error because message on display would probably get overwritten. So the test error, what we want to do is want this to be a list. And now we can use the collection assert. The expected value is first element should be result is 6. Second value should be another input please. and there. That's what the expected value is. The actual value should be finally we should we don't need these two lines, and kind of jumped the gun. We have not said the user input was received. So now the problem is that the abstraction does not fit. So instead of having a display abstraction, we actually need a user abstraction. The user abstraction differs from the display in that it can fetch input from the user in addition to showing things to the user. And we fix that by the console class now needs to use a user abstraction. And we need to move the user abstraction into the class library. There it is. And let's go to console calc. So now we have no errors, except we have to implement the getInput method, and here we just return null. So that we will set up flag we can use to assert. And at the top of the class test picture, we can get a setup method that initializes the list. So that is is equal to new list, and we set this flag, and that should work. Let's build. Have an error which is okay. We need to fix this too, so we'll just do that right now. And copy this method over. Here we can read from the console. Build again. And we have two test failing. It's like another test error. So the test has failed for the right reason, but it has caused the previous test to fail. So here we need you can see the error message as well. So it's missing another input, please. We have a blinking red light here to show that we have spent too much time in the red. This is the right test, and this is the test error. So just let's quickly get it to green. So the way to get it to green is once we have shown the result to the user, we also ask him for another input, and we also call getInput. That should fix our test, and we should see the blinking red light go off. And we're back in the green. That is good. Okay. Opportunity for refactoring. get this into region. Okay, and we have a new viewing here. Do it again. Okay, on to the next step. So the next step would be to take one secondary input. So in this case, just take this. In this case, the user should be, sorry, the messages that should go on to the console should be the result is text. Assuming we have initiated proceedings with this line, so it prints result 6, comes for another input. Then let's say we pass 10, 10, 20 and 30. That should get 60. Another prompt. And let's say at this point the user enters empty string and exits. And now we need to also check that the user input was fetched twice. That means we need to change our flag to a count. Count. Find out where it is used. Set it to 0. To here we implement it. Build again. That fails. So the test error is correct, but we're not picking the user inputs yet. So you also need to ensure that passing some fake user inputs. So fake user input in this case is 10, 20 and 30 inputs. And we create a property for that too. Private. Right. And whenever we call get user input, we return the fake user input. This should work. And fail the test. Now let's move on and fix the test. So if when I get a input, I need to paste it in a variable again. And if input, so we need a value to know if the input exists or doesn't. So in this case, the value is not empty. So if it's not empty, we return. Otherwise, we have to do the whole process again. So that is something to here. So we just paste that. Not using the input value here. So sorry. You also need to call get input. This looks like I'll fix it. but we are not entering empty as a fake input, so we can fix that here. So by default it will enter empty when prompted for the second input. Build this, and the test passes. This is great. Alright, so look here, there's some pretty strong duplication here, but we'll wait for the next test and then refactor. So the next test is to take in multiple inputs. So we'll we can come up with a conversation here. So it's more like a dialogue between the console app and the user. So let's say he starts again with the same input. So he gets 6 on the input please, at which point the user inputs 10, 20, 30. So he gets the result is 60. He's again prompted. At this point he enters 1, 3, 5 and 7 and 9. So that's 25. Should get 25. Again we prompted for input. At which point he enters an empty string and exits RAM. I could add more iterations, but we'll settle for this. So now fake user input needs to be a list, or rather a collection of inputs. We'll rename it and we'll actually turn it into a queue so that we can pop off in this case it has to be a queue of and we need to pass in an empty string to exit. And in all these cases we can assume the user enters no secondary inputs. So that works. And right, okay, final change to DQ items from the top of the queue and return it when get input is called. Right, this looks good, and let's wait. And we have an error, so it's expecting 6 but got only 4, and the missing items are the result is 25 and another input please. So we can fix that again, the same block of code, and let's see if that fixes it. And we have some errors, so it says calculate results for second input if user enters on the input failed. We're getting some few empty errors. That's oh, so the error is caching the value, and Build again. And it passes. Annotate this with a code error, some mistake. And now we have all tests passing. So now we see that there's a whole lot of code, there's a whole lot of duplication in this method. We can resolve that by simple do while loop. The terminating condition for this is input that we get from the user is not equal to string.1. That condition is met. We need to execute this block of code over and over again. I will just copy that, and we can replace the whole plot here. So let's comment that, and don't need this. Let's build. And it's a feat. We can now proceed to delete the whole plot, and we have a much cleaner method. Build again. So there we have it. Next step would be to try it out manually, because you should always have acceptance tests. So in this case, it's like we're all set to go. Pause, begin, drop to the console, and start out with, okay, so it's prompting us for the next input. So I say 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Right, 1, 3, 5, and it seems to go on and on. So this is correct. Let's try a number which is larger than 1000, which it should skip. Correct, and let's now exit. That looks good. Let's try the complicated case, which is a custom delimiter. And it blows up. So this is an example of things that can go wrong. So from my previous attempt, I found that it doesn't take a slash n as a new line, but rather as 2 characters, a slash followed by a line. So we need to tweak console cal to handle this case. So let's do that. Let's collapse everything and run a test here. And so we can see method is similar, so is equal to bring that to the next line, and we call console cal with semicolon, then a delimiter, and then follow that up with the numbers and the quotes, and you have to use that verbatim character, the verbatim form of the string. So this is not a new line anymore, but a /n, and the second parameter is the display. One pause. Let's just take the string again. 2 flashes, delimiter, new line, followed by the numbers. Let's build. You should see the same error. You can see that argument exception, string cannot be of 0 length, and let's see. Yes, that is the same error in the console. So now we can fix console calc by trimming. We can also replace verbatim /n with the new line character. Build again. And we have an error. Oops, looks like a test error. So we will mark that as a test error. Build. And you're back to green. Right, so let's try that out now. Pause beacons up to the console, start it up again, and then enter double slash custom delimiter to the quotes, and I get result 6. Let's be adventurous and try bigger things. Custom color. So this is custom delimiters of different length, and I'll go 10, 20, 30, 40. Close the string. Check. Right, and I get 100. So that looks good. So it seems like we have reached where we want to reach. So closing statements. If you look at a rhythm for this session, we had a couple of trips over here. If you look at, and that shows up in our graph here, so we can see that multiple runs were made on an uptrend. This is the bad part. And once again here, we have been in the green for a good amount of time, right up to this point. So we had a huge reduction here, and we've completed in around 40 minutes or so. And this is the entire 2 parts of the kata. So this is the end of the second video, and this is the start of the third one. So we had a pause here. Apart from that, let's now take a look at the class diagram view. And now the only changes appear to be that we have another rule here, which is the user. Console calc class has not changed much, neither has the calculator class. So this is a design that has emerged after the whole kata. So that's it from me now, and thanks for watching.